Okay, guys, so now we're going to go over the raise process flow. So what we're looking at right here is the full raise process flow map. This will take us through every stage of the process, all the way to the project closeout. So step zero, ironically, where we start is step zero. This step is really where we are acquiring the site and really filling in a lot of those fields or a lot of the fields that we're going to need, and making sure that we have all the information from the client that we need to go ahead and then move the project into the next bucket, which is site control. So once the project is in site control, this is really where our compliance department is going to get their hands on it. They're going to be looking it over pretty much in its entirety, reviewing the actual site lease, reviewing all the documents that have been signed, making sure that, like, for instance, the pricing is something that we can work with. Just make sure all the information is there and is real. And at which point we do then internally come and we populate all of the fields that we need in order to continue the project down the pipeline. Examples of this would be mortgage contact number, mortgage contact email. Those fields particularly relate to the SNDA and title verification. An SNDA and title verification, so we do need for all of these sites to have an SNDA actually signed. And this needs to be signed by the lender, not by the client. So the SNDA actually stands for Subordination I'm going to look this up one second. Sorry, guys, I just paused my recording there so I could actually look this up. Subordination, non-disturbance, and attornment agreement. So basically what this states is that the mortgage company, if there is one for the actual property, will not void our lease in case of default. So for instance, I own my house, I get a raised system put on our roof. I, for whatever reason, can't keep making my mortgage payments. The bank takes the house. They look at the lease and say, nope, this is not good. We don't know what this is, and tear it up and rip all the equipment off. We obviously cannot have that be happening. This is why we need that signed. It is crucial, really, really crucial. There's no way around it. Anyway, back to the overall of site control. This again is where we're going to make a lot of the distinctions in the determination, such as the inverter type, number of panels, panel type and size, actual install start date as an estimate. Then we do have some estimates such as like PTO date, NTP date, just some really, really basic auto-populated fields, but to kind of give us an idea of when we're going to be really moving forward with the project. And also during this stage, before we move the project into site survey, we will enter it into the Smart Preliminary program, enter it for Smart Prelim SOQ. So we enter it in there, and we're going to move on to site survey as our next bucket. So for the site survey, you may have just watched the video that I made on that, but basically this is where we're going to have a representative from one of the EPCs go out and actually look at the roof. They're going to look at the roof to really just try to verify the actual production that we've come up with remotely. They're also going to look at the roof quality. So one of the questions that's going to be asked likely during the actual sales call is, what's the age of the roof? And somebody may know, they may have just replaced it, or they may have no idea, or they may just say, yeah, it's pretty old, but we think it's still good. The site surveyor is really going to be the one to kind of put their stamp on that and say yay or nay. And depending on that, that's when we can look at different options. But in addition to that, they're going to look at the production. So if somebody thinks that they might have some trees there an issue, or think they may need some tree work done, the site surveyor is going to really be able to be boots on the ground and say, yep, this tree is in the way. We need this actually eliminated rather than just pruned or trimmed. And in addition to that, they're going to be going inside the building, and they're going to be taking pictures of what the actual framing of the roof is. And this is really, really important because we need to make sure that the roof can withstand the weight of the additional load from the solar panels and the racking. It's not a very heavy thing, but we do need to eventually submit for engineering through design, authentication, and engineering, and make sure we can get an engineer to stamp off on the roof and make sure that it will hold the weight. And also just, I'm going to take a step back here. I'd mentioned the Smart Preliminary SOQ. During the site control, once we do apply for that, we are going to be able to assign an actual block number to the Smart application. So that will be populated during the site control step. So moving on back to site survey. So one of the other things that we are going to have the site surveyor do is just take some photographs showing the actual electrical panel, showing the service cable coming down from the weatherhead, and just showing the meter on the outside of the house. Now, with a typical residential installation, we would be tying into that, but with this type of a process, we're going to be using a standalone meter. So it's going to be a little bit different, but basically by taking pictures of all this stuff, even though we're not going to be really touching it, we're just trying to spot some red flags that might be an issue later down the road, in case the electrical inspector comes in and says, hey, this is really all out-of-date equipment that's not going to fly. You need to bring this up to code. At least we'll have an idea of that going in rather than kind of going in and hoping for the best. We're going to be able to verify it. So, all right, moving on, design and authentication. This is where we're going to have our design team take a look at the notes and all the information that came back from the actual on-site survey that was obtained. Some of the things that they're going to be verifying, for instance, are if we can fit as many panels on the roof as we initially thought that we could. They're also going to review the shading analysis and, again, just really make sure that, that the shading is where we thought it would be. Additionally, during this stage, for instance, if the measurements are off, this is where we're going to have to really work together with the EPC, or we, Team Solar, are going to have to work together with the EPC to then update the amount of panels, potentially the inverter size, depending upon what actually has changed. But we are going to need to make sure all that information is accurate going in. This brings us to the next step, engineering. So this is where I preface that the engineering, we need an engineer to actually stamp that the roof will hold the weight of the additional load from the panels. In addition to that, we also do have some electrical engineering or electrical design work that needs to be done. This is going to be done by the EPC. They're going to create what's called a one line or a single line that then we're going to be able to send off as part of the interconnection application. So in conjunction with the engineering, we do take that single line, we send out our interconnection app. So that interconnection application can take a little bit of time. It's crucial that we get it done at this stage, just so that we can get it off and really try to get it into the utilities bucket as quickly as we can. Additionally, during this stage, we are going to determine, looking at any existing potential red flags that might be, might be problems, and this might actually happen a little bit in design authentication as well. But we're going to have more sets of eyes on it and basically get some people to really sign off and say, yep, this is fine, we can build here, or no, we can't. And I am, by the way, referring to like electrical design. So like, for instance, if somebody has a fuse box rather than a circuit breaker panel, that could be a little bit of a red flag and just be an automatic nod for needing a panel upgrade. So also in engineering, the next crucial step is the site lessor welcome call. So this is where we do reach out to the site host with any relative changes, or we reach out to them anyway, but we do need to inform them at this stage of any relative changes to the timeline, process, or scope. At this point, too, we're going to execute any of the documentation changes. So, for instance, if the system size changed, for instance, if a payout needs to change, any kind of change at all, this is where we're going to let them know what our finding is throughout the previous steps that we've been through. And in addition to that, we're just going to be able to give them a really updated estimate on timing for things like step 10, like the install. That's really what people care about, is getting this thing to the point where they can see panels on the roof and getting it turned on. So again, we're going to try to give them a very realistic timeline and be able to act on that. All right, so the next stage, stage 5, is project review. This is where we're going to look back, and if there were any changes that happened or required, we're going to review those, and again, just make sure everything is all accounted for, all documents have been signed. Just really, we're looking it over. This is, again, just measure twice, cut once. It's also during the stage that we're going to give the green light to apply for building and electrical permits. That's where you see the permit application stage. So this can take up to 30 days, sometimes longer, depending upon the municipality. So it is something that's important to get done and get done in a timely manner. But again, we really want to make sure that at this point, everything is really good to go as we are ordering, just so we're not sending in or having to set up for any changes after the fact. All right, so moving on, the next step, NTP pending, step 6. So this is where we really need to make sure that all things are back, such as the SNDA and title verification. We need to make sure that that is in and signed. Additionally, this is where we need to make sure that we've received the SMART preliminary SOQ, and also we've received a preliminary or the first stage of ISA. So without ISA or the interconnection agreement, we cannot tie into the grid. This can happen. It's not super common, but it can. So it's important that we do it ahead of time and that we do not move past there until we have all of those things. All right, so moving on. I know it kind of seems like I'm glazing over some of these, but there's a lot of internal pieces that need to be handled here. I apologize if this is a little bit professionally vague. If there are any deeper questions, again, please feel free to reach out to myself or James. With that said, so project sale ready. So this is again handled by our partners at Ecodaptive. They basically are making sure that all of the finite details of the project's pencil, and that the project is actually ready to go into the tranche to be purchased and to be sold to a greater financial institution. And after that, so we move on to finance complete and awaiting permits. So this is where we're giving it kind of like one last check, and we are waiting on permits. So we obviously cannot install until we have the permits in hand. So once we get those, we move on to step 9, install ready. At install ready, this is where we have to send the client a few things like the Exhibit B, which has the final design. Make sure they do approve that. And also, this will be where we're alerting them that they're going to be receiving their upfront payment due to them at notice of commencement. We're basically going to be coordinating with the EPC, the site host, just for any scheduling, just to make sure we can have everybody, kind of in line with when we're going to be showing up. So we're not calling them on, Sunday night saying, "Hey, can we come install tomorrow?" Just getting everybody on the schedule, keeping the clients happy and up to date, and then moving on, we get to the actual day. Of install. So this is where we do have the EPC show up with the equipment and install basically on the agreed upon areas and to the agreed upon design, and everything should go off pretty smoothly based on the amount of checks and attention that we've paid to this going forward, or leading up to this, I should say. And once the actual installation is complete, we move on to step number 11, which is the inspection. So in some instances, certain towns and municipalities require what they call a rough inspection, which is where they want to see the wiring, specifically the grounding for the system, about halfway through. So before the the panels actually get laid on the roof, they want to see where the grounding is, what all the wiring looks like, make sure it's all up to snuff. That can cause some time delays depending upon the availability of that actual inspector. But with that said, that's not every town, and in most cases, we're going to complete the install and call for the actual inspections. The inspectors will show up, sign off on the system, and we'll be able to move forward and then submit the signed off electrical permit to the utility company, so that they can give us approval to turn it on. And that point is called PTO, Permission to Operate. And that's basically where we can flip the switch and energize that system. The next step from there is the final SOQ. We basically need to get all the information for the system over to the Massachusetts DOER so that they can issue us the final SOQ. Once we do have that final SOQ, the final stage, number 14, is Project Closeout. This is where basically we do double check that everything is functioning as it should be, and at which point we're going to make whatever changes we need to based on who actually did purchase the system. We're going to change the names from Ecodaptive Team Solar Holdings, as needed. All right, guys, that basically outlines the 14 steps and some of the in-between processes of the raise process. Again, I hope this video is informative. And again, I don't think I listed this previously, but my name is Alex Reinhard. If I can answer any questions for you, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm more than happy to help. Thanks so much. Have a great day.